Dear viewers, imagine this. The person who shattered your heart, the one you swore you'd never forgive, suddenly returns years later, but not to apologize, not to heal old wounds. Instead, they come with a request so shocking, so unthinkable, that it shakes the ground beneath your feet. Would you open the door? Would you let them speak? Or would you turn away, locking the past where it belongs? Dear viewers, tonight, we share the haunting story of Michael Lawson, a man whose quiet life was upended the night his ex-wife returned, carrying a secret and a request he never saw coming. But before we begin, dear friends, take a moment, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and share in the comments where you're watching from. We love knowing which corner of the world our Voices of Reality family gathers from. Because tonight, we dive into a story of love, betrayal, silence, and the knock on the door that no one, least of all Michael, expected. Now, let us begin. Michael Lawson was born on a hot August morning in Ashford, Kentucky, a small American town where the summers smelled of cut grass and honeysuckle, and the winters left streets dusted in white silence. His father, Robert Lawson, worked at the steel mill. His hands were calloused, scarred by decades of labor. His mother, Eileen, kept a modest home. She stretched every dollar, baking cornbread that could feed 5 mouths even when there were only 3. Michael grew up with little, but he had something more valuable than wealth: stability. Every Sunday, the Lawson family filled the back pew of St. Mark's Church. Every neighbor knew his name. In a town that measured success by how hard you worked, Michael was taught that honesty was worth more than gold, and that loyalty was sacred. But, dear viewers, as you and I both know, life has a way of testing even the strongest values. From an early age, Michael was a dreamer. While others were content to inherit their father's jobs at the mill, Michael sketched houses in the margins of his notebooks. He dreamed of becoming an architect, of designing homes that stood for generations. But dreams require more than hope. And for the Lawson family, money was always short. Michael worked summers mowing lawns, painting fences, even shoveling snow for the wealthier families on Oakwood Drive. Each dollar went into a jar under his bed, a jar labeled "My Future." But fate is cruel. Just weeks before Michael's 18th birthday, tragedy struck. His father collapsed at the mill, his heart giving out after years of strain. Overnight, Michael became the man of the house. College faded into a distant star. His dreams of architecture were replaced by the weight of responsibility. Life doesn't always give you what you want, his mother told him, tears in her eyes. But it always gives you what you need to survive. Dear viewers, perhaps you've heard the old American saying, sometimes you have to play the hand you're dealt, not the one you wish for. That became Michael's silent motto. It was during this season of responsibility that Michael met her, Clara. Clara Jensen was unlike anyone in Ashford. She was bold, sharp-witted, with eyes that seemed to laugh at the world. She came from a wealthier family, the daughter of a local banker. She was the kind of girl who wore bright dresses when everyone else wore plain ones, who spoke of cities and lights beyond Kentucky as if she had already seen them. Michael was captivated. Where he saw limits, Clara saw possibilities. Where he worked tirelessly to mend broken things, she dreamed of breaking free. Together, they formed an unlikely pair, the quiet boy with calloused hands and the radiant girl who spoke of Manhattan skylines. Against all odds, they fell in love. Their courtship was the talk of the town. Some whispered that Clara would tire of him. Others said Michael would never keep up with her ambition. But they ignored the whispers, because in their youth, love felt eternal. And so, at 21, Michael Lawson stood in St. Mark's Church with Clara by his side, vowing to love her forever. Dear viewers, forever sometimes lasts shorter than we expect. The early years were sweet. Michael worked long hours at a construction firm, saving for the home he dreamed of building. Clara worked at the local library, though she often spoke of bigger things. At night, They sat on their small porch, sipping sweet tea under the Kentucky stars. Michael believed, truly believed, that this was the life he was meant to live. But Clara was restless. The same walls that gave Michael comfort made Clara feel trapped. She longed for the lights of Nashville, the pulse of bigger cities. She wanted more than the rhythm of a small town could ever give her. Arguments grew frequent. Clara accused Michael of being content with too little. Michael accused Clara of being ungrateful. Their words, once tender, turned sharp, until one morning, Clara packed a suitcase. She kissed Michael's cheek with cold lips and whispered, "I can't breathe here anymore," and she left. Dear viewers, imagine the silence of a house once filled with laughter, reduced to echoes of footsteps fading down a hallway. Imagine the bed half empty, the dinner table set for two but eaten alone. That was Michael's life. For years, he lived not as a man but as a shadow. The whispers in town cut deep. Clara was too good for him. She always wanted more. He bore it all with quiet dignity, even as his heart bled. Time, dear viewers, is a strange healer. Slowly, Michael rebuilt himself. He poured his pain into work, into caring for his aging mother, into long evenings of solitude. The jar labeled "My Future" remained under his bed, though the dreams inside had shifted. Now his future was simple: peace. Peace from heartbreak. Peace from betrayal. Peace from the woman who had walked away. For nearly 10 years, he lived in quiet routine. No calls, no letters, no whispers of Clara's name. He began to believe she was gone forever, another ghost in his past. But fate, as always, is not so merciful. It was a rainy Thursday evening. The sky hung low, heavy with thunder. Michael sat by the window, sipping black coffee, when a knock echoed through his small home. 3 knocks, steady, unfamiliar. He rose slowly, his heart oddly unsettled. When he opened the door, there she was, Clara. Older, yes, her hair streaked with gray. Her eyes, once defiant, now heavy with something else. Fear, desperation, regret. "Michael," she whispered, her voice trembling, "I need your help." The years melted in an instant. The wound he thought had scarred over tore open anew. Dear viewers, can you imagine? After all the silence, all the betrayal, the very face that had left him broken now stood before him, pleading. And the request she carried that night would change Michael's life forever. Dear viewers, the words she spoke at his doorway were not a plea for forgiveness. They were something darker, heavier. And as Michael listened, frozen in the rain-soaked night, he realized his story was only beginning. Michael stood frozen, his hand still gripping the doorknob, the storm's wind pushing against his back. Clara, his Clara, stood before him, rain streaking down her coat. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. For a moment, words failed him. "What are you doing here?" His voice was low, strained, as if it had been waiting years to escape. Clara's lips trembled. "Please, Michael, can I come in?" Every instinct screamed no. The memories of betrayal, of nights alone, of whispered gossip, flooded his chest. Yet, against his will, he stepped aside. She entered cautiously, her eyes sweeping over the familiar room. The same walls she once called too small now seemed to shelter her. Michael shut the door but kept his distance. "Say what you came to say." As she removed her coat, Michael saw how time had carved its story on her face. She was no longer the glowing young woman who once dreamed of cities. She was worn, fragile. But the ache she left him with had not aged. It felt as raw as the day she walked out. Clara's gaze softened. "You've kept the place just the same. Why wouldn't I?" Michael snapped, bitterness creeping through. Not all of us needed to run. The silence stretched, broken only by thunder. Clara lowered her head. "I deserve that." Dear viewers, can you feel it? The tension of old love meeting old wounds? Sometimes the sharpest knives are not strangers, but the ones we once held close. In a town like Ashford, nothing went unseen. Already, neighbors had noticed Clara's return. Behind curtains, whispers spread like wildfire. At the diner, an old friend of Michael's shook his head. "If she's back, it's trouble." At church, Mrs. Thompson muttered, "The devil never returns empty-handed." Michael knew, letting Clara back into his life, even for one night, would not stay private. Ashford loved its stories, and Clara's return was a headline. Yet, dear viewers, the greater storm was not outside his door. It was the one now brewing inside his chest. Clara finally spoke, her voice breaking the silence. "I know I hurt you. I know I left scars that may never heal. But Michael, I had reasons. Reasons I couldn't share back then." Michael's jaw tightened. "Reasons? Clara, you left me with nothing but a note on the kitchen table. No goodbye, no explanation, just silence." She swallowed hard. "If I could undo it. But you can't." His words cut sharp. Her eyes filled, but she pressed on. "I didn't come for forgiveness. I came because I need your help. I wouldn't be here otherwise." Michael's heart pounded. The anger, the betrayal. It collided with the faint echo of the love they once shared. They sat across from each other at the small wooden table, the same one they had once laughed around, the same one where arguments had ended in tears. Clara's hands shook as she wrapped them around a steaming cup of coffee Michael reluctantly offered. He stayed standing, arms crossed. "You said you need my help. What kind of help?" His voice carried suspicion. She hesitated. Her eyes darted to the window, as though expecting shadows to emerge from the storm. "It's not easy to explain." "Then try." The clock ticked loudly, each second a reminder of the years lost between them. Later that night, long after Clara had been given the couch to rest, Michael lay awake in his bed. Sleep would not come. The sound of rain tapping the windows only deepened his thoughts. Why was she here? What danger followed her? Could he trust a single word from the woman who once shattered him? Dear viewers, imagine lying awake with ghosts at your doorstep. The very person you prayed to forget, now asleep under your roof. Would your heart soften or harden further? Michael stared at the ceiling until dawn, knowing one thing for certain. Clara's return was no accident. By morning, Ashford buzzed with rumors. Michael's neighbor, old Mr. Dugan, knocked under the pretense of borrowing sugar, but his eyes lingered on Clara's car in the driveway. At the diner, whispers spread faster than coffee poured. "She's back. Why now? What does she want from him?" Michael ignored it all, but Clara's presence made his quiet life feel fragile again. At breakfast, Clara finally said the words that set Michael's heart racing. "I need you to protect me." Michael blinked. "Protect you? From what?" Her eyes darted, her hands tightening around her cup. "It's complicated. Clara." His voice grew sharp. "Don't play games with me. You show up after 10 years, asking for my help, and all you give me are riddles." Her lips quivered. "If I tell you, Michael, you'll never see me the same way again." Dear viewers, can you feel the weight of those words? Secrets have a way of corroding trust like rust on iron. And Michael was about to discover that the past he thought was buried was only just beginning to rise. Clara finally whispered, almost too soft to hear, "There are people after me, dangerous people, and they won't stop until..." She cut herself off, shaking her head violently. Michael's heart sank. The anger inside him clashed with something else. Fear. "What did you do, Clara?" Her silence was the only answer. Dear viewers, imagine standing at the edge of a storm you never asked for, hearing thunder before the lightning strikes. Michael Lawson had thought his story with Clara ended years ago. But in that moment, as her words hung heavy in the air, he realized his life was about to be pulled into shadows he could never have imagined. And the shocking request she came to deliver was still waiting to be spoken. The morning light filtered through lace curtains, but it did little to ease the storm brewing inside Michael's home. Clara sat at the edge of the chair, fingers tapping against the wooden table. Michael stood with his arms crossed, his jaw tight. "You need to explain. Now." Clara's eyes glistened. "If I do, you'll never forgive me." Michael leaned closer, voice sharp. "You already know what you did 10 years ago, Clara. I've lived with that wound every day. You think there's worse you can add to it? Tell me." She flinched, as though struck by the memory of her own choices. Dear viewers, can you feel it? Sometimes the hardest truth isn't the one spoken, but the one carried in silence. Outside, Ashford hummed with curiosity. At the diner, whispers curled around coffee cups. "Michael's letting her stay," one woman murmured. "Foolish man," another replied. "The past doesn't knock without reason. In small towns, secrets don't stay buried long." And Clara's presence had already disturbed the fragile balance Michael fought to protect. As Clara hesitated, Michael's thoughts raced. Why should I help her? After everything? But another voice, softer, intruded. What if she's truly in danger? Could I really turn her away? Dear viewers, isn't that the cruel trick of love? Even when shattered, the heart remembers what it once felt. And Michael's heart, though scarred, still remembered Clara. Clara finally spoke, her voice trembling. "I left, not just because of this town, not just because I wanted more. I left because I was involved in something dangerous. And if I had stayed, Michael, it would have destroyed you too." Michael froze. "What do you mean involved? With who?" Clara looked down, tears threatening to spill. "There were people, men I should never have trusted. I thought they could help me chase the life I wanted. Instead, they took everything. My money, my dignity, my peace." Michael's voice shook with rage. "And you left me to carry the shame? You let me believe you walked out because I wasn't enough." Her tears fell freely now. "I thought I was protecting you. If they had known how much you meant to me..." She trailed off, her sobs choking her words. Dear viewers, forgiveness is never simple. Even when the truth crawls out of the shadows, the wounds remain. Michael paced the room, fists clenched. He wanted to throw her out. He wanted to scream. But instead he asked, "And now? Why come back after all these years?" Clara lifted her head. Her next words sent chills through him. "Because, Michael, they found me again. And they won't stop until they get what they want." Michael's voice dropped. "And what do they want?" Clara's silence was deafening. That night, as Clara slept on the couch, Michael sat alone in the dark. His mother's Bible lay on the shelf beside him. He opened it absently, his eyes falling on the verse she once underlined. "Be sure your sins will find you out." The words burned. He looked at Clara, her chest rising and falling with restless dreams. He realized she carried sins far heavier than he ever imagined. And now, those sins were knocking at his door. The next day, Michael walked through town. Every face seemed to ask the same unspoken question. Why is she back? At the hardware store, his old friend Samuel pulled him aside. "Mike, don't get dragged back into her mess. You built a life without her. Don't let her ruin it." Michael forced a thin smile, but inside, doubt consumed him. That evening, he confronted Clara again. "You need to tell me the whole truth or you leave." Clara's lips trembled. "If I tell you everything, Michael, you'll hate me more than you already do." Michael's voice softened unexpectedly. "Clara, I already hate what you did, but I don't hate you. Not completely. Not yet. Don't make me carry more ghosts without answers." Her tears fell silently. "Then listen closely, because this isn't just about me anymore. It's about someone else." Dear viewers, imagine sitting across from the person who once broke you, hearing words that shake your very soul. Clara Jensen had returned, not for forgiveness, not for love, but for something darker, something bound in secrets Michael was never meant to carry. and the name she was about to speak would unravel everything. Clara didn't lift her eyes right away. She just let the words hover between them, heavy as a church bell that hadn't yet struck. "Someone else?" she repeated, so softly Michael almost missed it. "Say it plain," he whispered. Her fingers tightened around the mug. "There's a boy." The room seemed to swallow sound. Outside, the wind rattled the maple leaves along the fence, a dry whisper that moved like a rumor through town. Michael's voice came out slow. "A boy." Clara nodded. "He's 14. 14. The number rang like a toll in Michael's head, counting backward through years of silence, years of measuring his life in small tasks and quiet evenings. 14 pressed up against the math he didn't want to do. "Where is he?" Michael asked. Clara's gaze flickered to the window. "Asleep. In the car." Michael's chair scraped back so hard it startled her. He crossed to the door and pulled it open. The late light had turned the driveway bronze. Rain had rinsed the dust from the earth and left the air smelling like wet iron and honeysuckle. Parked under the maple was a faded sedan. In the back seat, a boy lay curled in a hoodie, cheek against the glass. Even at rest, his body held an alertness, as if he'd learned sleep was something you did with one eye open. Michael stood on the porch and felt the ache of something old and unnamed. He could not get his breath right. He closed the door softly. Dear viewers, sometimes the truth does not arrive with a shout. Sometimes it comes as a figure asleep in a back seat, a shadow at your curb, a life you didn't know you were already tied to. Michael turned back to Clara. "What's his name?" She swallowed. "Gabriel." He tasted the name. "Why bring him here?" "Because," she said, forcing the words out, "the people after me, they know about him, and they think the fastest way to get to me is through him." Michael set a second blanket on the couch. He moved through the living room with the awkwardness of a man trying not to wake old ghosts. On the mantel, his mother's faded photograph watched him. Eileen in her Sunday dress, chin lifted the way women of her generation lifted their chins at hard weather. He felt the pull of her steadying presence, the way she used to say, "Right is right, son. Do the next right thing." Clara stood at the threshold, hands twisted together. "He hasn't eaten much today," she said. "He doesn't like to look hungry." Michael nodded once, then went to the kitchen and set a pan on the stove. Bacon, eggs, toast. Food that gave you something to hold on to. The room filled with a smell that felt like childhood. Fat popping in the pan, bread browning to comfort. Dear viewers, there are kinds of care that words can't do. There is the language of warm food, of a roof, of a blanket folded just so. A man like Michael speaks that language even when the person in his house is the one who left him shattered. Clara watched him cook as if the sight itself cut her open. "You always did that," she said. "You always made sure there was enough." He flipped the eggs. "Enough for who?" "For everybody." He didn't answer. He plated the food, wrapped it in foil and set it by the door. "Wake him," Michael said. "He can eat inside." Clara shook her head. "If I wake him wrong, he'll panic. He's had to learn to be quick." "He can learn to be safe," Michael said, and something in his voice made her look at him differently, like she was seeing not the boy she left but the man who grew from it. They stepped into the deepening dusk. The car door creaked. Gabriel startled awake, eyes darting to find the exit. He was tall for 14, shoulders narrow but tense with a grown man's caution. A thin scar nicked one eyebrow. His eyes, dark, watchful, flicked from Clara to Michael and then to the house like he was mapping a new room for escape routes. "It's okay," Clara said. "This is Michael." Gabriel's stare held steady. "We leaving?" "We're going inside," Clara said. "Just to eat." He slid out of the car without a word. Michael noticed the backpack, frayed at the straps, zipped to the teeth. A life lived on the move weighed surprisingly little. In the kitchen, Gabriel stood with his hands in his hoodie pocket as if not trusting the table to hold. Michael set the plate down and stepped back. No speeches, no questions, just food within reach. Gabriel ate quickly, mechanically, eyes flicking up between bites like he expected the meal to be revoked. When he finished, he wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "Thanks." Michael nodded. "There's more if you want it." A long pause. "I'm good." Michael heard the sentence behind the sentence. "I don't want to owe you." They sat in a triangle. Michael at the table, Clara near the doorway like a person who might need to run, Gabriel leaning against the counter. The house hummed with the old refrigerator's rattle and the distant chirr of cicadas. "How long have you been on the road?" Michael asked, keeping his voice level. Gabriel's mouth tugged sideways. "Long enough." Michael nodded. "You in school?" "Sometimes." "Favorite subject?" "A beat." "Math." Michael almost smiled. "Me too. Numbers don't lie." Gabriel snorted. A small, surprised laugh that showed the boy beneath the armor. "People do." The air changed at that. Michael felt Clara flinch and didn't look at her. Dear viewers, out of the mouths of teenagers come truths that make grown men swallow hard. Michael stood and cleared the plate. "There's a room down the hall," he said. "Bed's clean. You can sleep there tonight. Door locks from the inside. Bathroom's across from it." Gabriel's eyes flicked to Clara for permission. She nodded. He took his backpack, and as he passed Michael, he paused only a moment. "Thanks," he said again, almost like a dare. "You're welcome," Michael replied. They watched him disappear down the hallway, the soft thud of the door closing a punctuation mark. Silence folded back around them. "You didn't answer me," Michael said quietly. "Who are they?" "The men who want you." Clara pressed her hands to the counter like she was bracing against an invisible tide. "It started after I left," she said. "At first it was small. A job, a quick shortcut, somebody who knew somebody who could help me make it. You think you're too smart to be tricked. You think you're different. Then one day you realize you owe things you can't pay in money." "What things?" Michael's voice sharpened. "Information," she said. "Access, favors. Then when you want out." She laughed without humor. "There is no out. Not for free. You bring them to my door?" "I brought him to your door," she said, and it was both apology and plea. "Because I don't know where else to go." Michael gripped the back of a chair. Anger rose with an old, cold clarity. "So say it. Say what you came to ask." Clara's breath broke. "I need you to protect us." "That's not a request," Michael said. "That's a prayer." "What exactly are you asking me to do?" She looked up then, eyes ringed red, raw pride stripped away. "I need you to be my husband again." The words hung in the kitchen like a struck chord, trembling through every beam and nail of the house that had once been theirs. Dear viewers, there it is, the request no one saw coming. Not an apology, not a second chance at romance. A legal, dangerous, life-changing ask. Michael stared at her, then let out a short, disbelieving breath. "You must be out of your mind." "Listen," Clara rushed. "The shelter program I found, the safe one, the only one that'll keep us out of reach, requires a spouse for immediate emergency relocation under their family policies. They move you faster if there's a legal spouse. No questions. No wait list. I tried everything else. I am out of time." Michael shook his head, trying to dislodge the idea. "You want me to lie to the state of Kentucky? I want you to sign a paper and stand next to me one more time," she said, voice shaking. 30 days. After that, I'll dissolve it. You never have to see me again." "You think it works that way?" Michael's voice climbed. "You think marriage is a motel key you drop in a plastic bowl on the way out? You already taught me what it means to be left, Clara. You think I'm going to volunteer for that twice?" She winced. "If there was any other way, I'd take it. But they're watching me. They know my patterns. If I try to go in alone with a child, they'll trace it. This program, it's different. They bury you." Michael's hands opened and closed. He felt the ground he'd remade beneath him shift, the way a riverbank gives under sudden floodwater. "And why?" he asked, the words gritted out. "Should I trust one syllable out of your mouth? Because I told you there's a boy," she whispered. "And because you saw him." "That's not trust," Michael said. "That's evidence." Clara nodded. "Then let the evidence move you." The argument bent through the house, quiet and fierce. "You wrecked me," Michael said, not as an accusation but a fact laid on the table. "You broke the bones of my life and left. And now you ask me to stand in a courthouse and put your name back next to mine. For a program, for a shelter, for a... What strategy?" "For a child," she said. "Not a strategy. A life." He looked down the hallway where a soft line of light leaked from under the bedroom door. He remembered the jar under his bed with "My future" scrawled on masking tape. He remembered his father's funeral, his mother's steady hand, the vows at St. Mark's when forever fit his mouth like a simple word. "What happened to the boy's father?" he asked, throat tight. Clara's breath hitched. "He is not safe." "Not safe like the men hunting you?" "Worse." Her eyes flashed. "The kind of man who turns people into tools." "Did he hurt you?" She looked away. "Not the way you mean." Michael felt heat crawl up his neck. "If I do this, if I need the truth, not the half you can say without choking." Clara pressed her palm flat to the counter. "You'll get the truth," she said, "but not all at once. Tonight I'm asking for one thing, your answer." Rain started again, fine and persistent. It slicked the road and made the streetlights smear gold across the wet. Somewhere down the block, a screen door banged and a neighbor's TV babbled the evening news. The world went on indifferent, while in Michael's kitchen the past and present braided like rope. Dear viewers, this is where stories turn, not on grand speeches, but on small words that alter a life's direction. Yes. No. Stay. Go. Michael walked to the sink and turned the tap on, then off, as if the sound could sort his thoughts. He looked at his hands, hands that had poured concrete, steadied beams, set thresholds. Thresholds. He had always been good at making places where people crossed from outside to in. 30 days, he said hollowly. Then I dissolve it. Clara's shoulders dropped as if someone had cut a string. 30 days, she repeated. You stay here the night, he said. Tomorrow we go to the courthouse. After that, you tell me everything I ask. No more riddles. Agreed, she whispered. Michael, thank you. Don't, he said sharply. And the word wasn't cruel so much as protective, of himself, of a boundary he was drawing with chalk on wet pavement. Later, the house settled. Gabriel's door clicked shut. Clara took the couch again despite Michael offering the bed. He laid a spare quilt across the back like a barrier and a kindness. The clock in the hall ticked on, and with every sweep of the second hand he felt the shape of his life alter, timber by timber. He sat in his old armchair and stared at the ceiling's hairline cracks, the ones he meant to fix but never did because they didn't hurt anything. He thought of the courtroom he'd avoided for 10 years, the vows he never expected to speak again, the sound of Clara's last word at the door. Please, dear viewers, for some of us, forgiveness is not a moment but a muscle that trembles under weight. And responsibility is not a feeling but a set of actions you take even when your heart is tired. He must have drifted, because when he opened his eyes a new quiet had fallen. The kind that makes the hairs at the back of your neck rise. A too deep quiet, like a held breath. He stood. From the hallway, a floorboard creaked. Michael moved toward the sound, slow, careful. The old house knew his footstep and sang back in familiar groans. He reached the end of the hall and saw Gabriel's door open a sliver, light spilling thin and pale across the carpet. Gabe, Michael whispered. The door swung wider. Gabriel stood there, hoodie zipped to his chin, backpack on one shoulder, shoes in his hand. His face was unreadable and young and already older than it should have been. "You leaving?" Michael said softly. Gabriel's voice was quiet but steady. "If I stay, they find us. Nobody knows you're here." Gabriel stared at him, and in that stare Michael saw a catalog of nights slept in cars, the skill of reading rooms by the angle of a jaw and the type of lock on a door. "They always find us. What did she tell you to do?" "Stay close," he said. "But if she says run, I run." Michael nodded slowly, as if receiving instructions from a world he didn't know how to enter. "Do you trust me enough to try another way?" Gabriel's jaw ticked. "I don't trust easy." "Good," Michael said. "That might keep you alive. But if you walk out tonight, you'll be alone in the dark with people who count on that." He stepped back from the doorway, palms open. "You can lock this door from the inside. I put a chair under the knob when I was your age. It stops nothing and helps you sleep some. Take the chair." Gabriel looked at the chair. Solid oak, scuffed at the feet. He slid it under the knob with an engineer's precision. "Okay," he said, almost a whisper. "Good night," Michael said. "Night," the boy replied, and the door clicked shut. Michael returned to the living room. Clara was awake, eyes open in the dark, as if she'd felt the air shift. She sat up on her elbows. "Everything all right?" she asked. "For now." Clara's throat worked. Does he seem okay?" "He seems trained," Michael said. "To leave." Clara closed her eyes. Michael leaned on the doorframe and felt the question he'd been swallowing burn his tongue. He couldn't carry it to morning. Not anymore. "If I stand there tomorrow," he said, "if I put my name back next to yours, if I draw their eyes off you and the boy," he paused, letting each clause find its weight, "then I need to know the thing you keep skating around." Clara's fingers twisted in the quilt. "Is Gabriel my son?" The room narrowed to the space between his words and her breath. Clara didn't move. The old clock ticked. Down the block, someone's dog barked once and fell quiet. At last, she opened her mouth. "Dear viewers, there are answers that split a life into before and after. There are truths you cannot unhear." Clara looked at Michael, and in her face was a decade of choices, a lattice of fear and longing and regret. She whispered, "I came to ask you to be my husband again, Michael, because the boy sleeping down that hall," she swallowed hard, words scraping like stones, "might be yours." Silence crashed absolute. Michael felt the world tilt, every nail in the house singing a thin, bright note. He braced his hand on the wall to stay upright. Dear viewers, what would you do if the past you buried knocked with a child at your door? If the woman who left asked you to stand for her once more? Legally, publicly, dangerously, while a boy who might be yours learned how to sleep behind a locked door. Would you say yes, or would you save yourself? Tell us, dear viewers. If you were in Michael's shoes, what would you do? Michael stood rooted in the living room as Clara's whisper echoed through him. The boy might be yours. The old clock ticked steadily, mocking his uneven breath. The sound of rain against the window seemed louder, sharper, as if the world itself leaned in to hear his reaction. His throat worked, but no words came. At last he rasped, "Might." Clara closed her eyes. "Michael, please. Don't please me," he snapped, his voice cracking under the strain. "Is he mine or not?" Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I don't know. I truly don't." Michael turned away, pacing, gripping his head. Dear viewers, imagine it. The wound of abandonment ripped open, now salted with uncertainty about a boy who might be the blood you never knew you had. Michael never slept that night. When dawn finally bled into Ashford, he sat at the kitchen table, staring at the faded wood grain like it might offer answers. His coffee went cold in his hands. Clara hovered near the counter, silent, eyes swollen from crying. Gabriel didn't appear until later, shouldering his backpack, already braced for travel. "We should go," Clara said carefully. "Courthouse opens at 9. Michael said nothing. He pushed away from the table, grabbed his coat, and walked to the door. Clara followed like a shadow, Gabriel trailing, suspicion carved into his young face. The Ashford courthouse was a brick building that smelled of wax and paper. The moment they stepped inside, Michael felt eyes on him. People recognized him. The steady Lawson boy, now grown into a man whose life had stayed quiet after Clara left. To see him back here with her was a sight. The clerk barely hid her surprise as she slid the forms across the counter. "Application for marriage license," she said briskly. "Both signatures required. Identification. Fees $50. Michael pulled out his wallet with shaking hands. Clara's fingers brushed his as she signed, and he pulled back like burned. Gabriel sat on a bench in the corner, staring hard at the tiled floor. He looked like he wanted to vanish. Form by form, line by line, Michael felt the absurdity of it. His name beside hers again. The date marked, the ink drying. 30 days, he reminded himself. 30 days and then it's undone. But deep down, dear viewers, he knew it would never be undone. Paper may tear, but memory does not. The clerk stamped the forms. "You'll need a ceremony. Judge can do it this afternoon." Clara's eyes darted to Michael. He said nothing, jaw clenched. The clerk nodded toward the hall. Courtroom B. Judge Whitaker presiding. Judge Whitaker was an older man with sharp eyes that missed nothing. He looked at Michael, then at Clara, and smirked faintly. "Well, didn't expect to see you two again." The ceremony was short, words spoken with rote efficiency, but to Michael, each syllable felt like a chain tightening. "Do you take this woman?" The pause stretched. Michael forced out, "I do." When it was done, Clara whispered, "Thank you." Michael didn't look at her. By evening, Ashford was ablaze with whispers. At the diner, at the church, on the porch swings, everyone knew. They remarried? After all that? It's not love. It's something else. Poor Michael. He doesn't deserve another heartbreak. Michael felt their stares when he stopped at the grocery store. He wanted to shout the truth, that this wasn't about romance, but survival. But the truth was tangled in secrets too dangerous to speak. That night, Michael stared into the bathroom mirror. He saw his father's jaw, his mother's weary eyes, and behind them, the reflection of a man trapped by choices that weren't his own. Dear viewers, have you ever felt your life slip from your hands, not because you let go, but because someone else pulled the strings? Michael clenched the sink. He had agreed, 30 days, but now the weight of it pressed down like a millstone. It was the following evening when Michael first noticed the car. A black sedan parked too long across from his house. Its windows dark, its engine off. When he stepped outside, it pulled away slowly, deliberately. Michael's gut clenched. He went back inside, closing the door firmly. Clara looked up, reading his expression instantly. "They've found us," she whispered. Later, Gabriel cornered Michael in the hall. His eyes, so sharp for a boy, held steady. "You don't trust her, do you?" Michael hesitated, then admitted, "Not yet." "Good," Gabriel said. "Neither do I." The boy turned away, leaving Michael with a chill deeper than the storm outside. Dear viewers, the past has a way of sending shadows ahead of itself. Michael Lawson had agreed to 30 days of borrowed vows. But already, the cost of that agreement was circling his home, watching, waiting, and Clara's next confession would shake his very sense of blood and belonging. Nights in Ashford had once been Michael's refuge. Quiet, predictable, marked only by the ticking of the clock and the hum of cicadas. Now his house felt crowded with silence that wasn't his own. Clara slept lightly on the couch, waking at the smallest creak. Gabriel locked his door each night, a chair wedged under the knob. Michael himself drifted between restless half-sleep and sudden jolts awake, scanning shadows that seemed too thick, listening for cars that lingered too long. The black sedan had not returned, but Michael felt its ghost at every corner of the street. One evening, after Gabriel had gone to his room, Michael turned to Clara, his voice low and hard. "You told me he might be mine. I need more than that. When? Where? How can you not know?" Clara's hands twisted in the quilt on her lap. "Because, Michael, in those last months before I left, I was living two lives. With you, and away from you." Michael's breath caught. "You're telling me?" "Yes," she whispered, shame flooding her face. "I was with someone else. Not out of love, not even desire. Out of fear. Out of the mess I had walked into. I thought it was protection. I thought it was power. But it was neither." Michael's jaw clenched so tight it ached. "Who?" Clara's lips trembled. "A man named Victor Crane. He's dangerous, ruthless, the kind of man who believes people are property. I should never have gone near him. But when you're drowning, you reach for anything that looks like land, even if it's jagged rock." Dear viewers, imagine hearing this. The child you'd begun to wonder about. His blood might be yours, or might belong to a man whose very name dripped with menace. Michael stood, pacing the floor. "You let me believe all these years you left because I wasn't enough. And now you tell me you were tangled with men like that." Clara flinched. "I wanted to keep you safe." "Safe?" Michael barked, bitterness spilling out. "You call this safe? Bringing them to my doorstep? Bringing a boy who—" He broke off, fists trembling. "Michael," Clara whispered, "Gabriel doesn't know. He's never asked about his father. I told him the truth would come when it was time. But the time, it's here now." From the hallway, a floorboard groaned. Both turned. Gabriel stood half in shadow, his face pale. "You think I don't hear you?" His voice cracked. "You think I don't know you've been hiding something my whole life?" "Gabe," Clara stepped forward, but he raised a hand. "Don't," he said coldly. "I know I don't belong anywhere. Not with you. Not here. Not with him." He flicked his eyes toward Michael. Michael's chest tightened. "That's not true," he said. But the words felt fragile, paper-thin against the boy's years of doubt. Gabriel turned and slammed his door, the echo ringing through the small house like a gavel strike. The next morning, Michael found a letter slipped under his door. It bore no return address, just a single line scrawled in rough handwriting. "Custody is coming." He showed it to Clara. She went white as bone. "It's Victor," she whispered. "He's making his move. He wants Gabriel." Michael's pulse thundered. "He can't just take him." Clara shook her head. "You don't know men like Victor. He doesn't ask. He buys judges. He twists laws. And when he can't bend the system, he breaks it." Dear viewers, have you ever felt justice slip like sand through your fingers? That morning, Michael realized the courthouse that had bound him back to Clara might soon tear Gabriel from them both. At church, the whispers followed Michael down every aisle. "Remarried her? Can you believe it? They've got a boy now. Looks too old to be his. I heard custody papers are being filed." Michael kept his eyes on the hymnal, his voice rough on the words of faith. Clara sat stiff beside him. Gabriel hunched low, glaring at the pew in front of him. The town smelled blood, and whispers, dear viewers, can cut deeper than knives. That evening, Clara cornered Michael in the kitchen. "Michael, listen to me. If this goes to court, they'll tear Gabriel apart. Victor will paint me unfit, call me unstable, dredge up every mistake. And with your history, your stability, they might listen if you claim him." Michael froze. "Claim him? As your son," Clara said. Her eyes were desperate, pleading. "Stand up and say Gabriel is yours. They'll believe you. You're Michael Lawson, the man who never faltered, who never left." Michael's chest felt hollow. "You want me to lie under oath?" Clara shook her head violently. I want you to tell the truth of what matters. Blood or not, he needs protection. He needs a father who won't sell him. Dear viewers, what would you do? To step forward in a courtroom, to place your name and honor on a boy who might not even be yours. Could you bear the weight of that choice? That night, the black sedan returned. Michael saw it from the window, parked under the streetlight, engine humming low. This time, it did not leave. Gabriel noticed too. They're watching, he muttered, fists in his hoodie pocket. Told you they always find us. Michael felt his stomach turn. The fight was no longer in whispers and papers. It was circling his house like a wolf. Dear viewers, the sins of the past had found their way to Michael's doorstep. A boy uncertain of his blood, a man uncertain of his vows, and a predator circling, ready to strike through the cracks of the law. Soon, the courthouse would no longer be about vows whispered in haste, but about custody, bloodlines, and the truth that cannot be buried. The letter came by certified mail, stamped in cold black ink. Notice of custody proceedings. Gabriel Jensen. Petitioner, Victor Crane. Michael read it twice, his pulse hammering louder each time. Clara sat across from him, face pale. Gabriel stood at the kitchen counter, pretending not to listen, but his grip on the juice glass whitened his knuckles. Court dates in 2 weeks, Michael muttered. Clara covered her face with her hands. He's moving fast. Who is he? Gabriel demanded suddenly. This Victor. What does he want with me? Clara froze. The room hung heavy. Michael answered for her, his voice steady. He's a man who thinks people belong to him. But you don't belong to anyone, Gabriel. Not him. Not even me. You're your own. Gabriel's eyes darkened, torn between suspicion and fragile hope. 2 weeks later, Michael walked into the Ashford courthouse, the same building where he had stood beside Clara just days before to sign papers that bound them together again. Only now, the stakes were far greater. The air buzzed with whispers. Reporters lingered at the back, tipped off by the Crane name. Townsfolk filled the benches, curious to see how scandal and power would clash. At the front, Victor Crane sat with his attorney. He was a man who wore wealth like armor. Tailored suit, gold cufflinks, a stillness that radiated menace. His eyes, cold and pale, swept over Michael and Clara with calculated disdain. Michael had faced storms, death, and years of heartbreak. But in that moment, dear viewers, he felt like prey under a predator's gaze. Gabriel sat between Michael and Clara, his shoulders hunched. He didn't look at Crane, but Michael saw his jaw tighten, his eyes flick with recognition and fear. Clara reached for Gabriel's hand. He pulled slightly away. Michael leaned closer, whispering, "No matter what happens, you're not alone." Gabriel didn't respond, but his lips pressed together hard, as if holding words he dared not release. Victor's lawyer rose first, voice slick as oil. "Your Honor, we are here because a child, Gabriel Jensen, has been unlawfully withheld from his rightful guardian. My client, Mr. Victor Crane, has both biological and financial claim to the boy. He can provide stability, education, and security. In contrast, the boy's mother, Clara Jensen, now Clara Lawson again, is unstable, transient, and unfit. The man beside her, Mr. Michael Lawson, has no legal claim whatsoever." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Clara's face burned. Michael stared straight ahead, fists clenched on his knees. Then Clara's lawyer, a tired public defender with kind eyes, rose. "Your Honor, we contest every word. This boy has been raised by his mother, who has fought to keep him safe from the very man claiming custody. We will show Victor Crane's history of coercion, manipulation, and violence. And we will present testimony that Mr. Lawson has been a stable, respected figure in this community, ready to provide the environment Gabriel needs." The judge nodded curtly. "Proceed." Victor's team struck first. They presented documents, hotel receipts, photographs of Clara with Victor years ago, rumors of debts unpaid. They painted her as reckless, irresponsible, a woman who abandoned her husband and fell into bad company. "Your Honor," the lawyer sneered, "is this the example a boy deserves?" Clara trembled under the weight of shame. Michael placed a steadying hand on the table, not touching her, but close enough that she felt the anchor. Then the defender rose. "Your Honor, this is not about Clara's mistakes. This is about Victor Crane, a man under investigation in 3 states for fraud, extortion, and assault. A man who uses his wealth to bury truth. We will bring witnesses to show what Gabriel has endured under Victor's shadow." Victor smirked, utterly unbothered. His gaze slid toward Michael, cold amusement in his eyes. "Gabriel Jensen," the judge said, "approach the stand." The boy stiffened. Clara whispered, "It's okay." But Michael leaned close, his voice low. "Tell the truth, whatever it is. That's enough." Gabriel walked to the stand, back straight. He looked smaller than usual, swallowed by the wood paneling and the gravity of grown-up eyes. The lawyer asked, "Do you know Victor Crane?" "Yes," Gabriel said flatly. "Who is he to you?" Gabriel's eyes flickered, but his voice stayed steady. "He's a man who tried to make my mom do things she didn't want. He said if she didn't, he'd take me. He scared us. All the time." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Clara covered her mouth. Victor's lawyer shot up. "Objection. This is hearsay." The judge silenced him with a glare. "Overruled. Continue." The lawyer pressed. "Gabriel, do you know if Victor is your father?" Gabriel's throat bobbed. He looked at Clara, then Michael. Finally, he whispered, "I don't know. Nobody ever told me." The courtroom hushed, breathless. The defense asked Michael to the stand next. "Mr. Lawson," the lawyer said, "do you claim Gabriel as your son?" Michael hesitated. Every eye in the room bore down on him. He felt Gabriel's gaze most of all. Pleading, fearful, hidden under teenage defiance. "Yes," Michael said slowly, his voice rough. "Whether by blood or not, he is mine." Whispers erupted, some supportive, some mocking. The judge's gavel banged. Victor leaned back, smiling like a man watching a puppet dance. Victor's lawyer pounced. "Then let us settle this with science. Paternity test. Blood does not lie. If Mr. Lawson claims this boy, let the court compel DNA evidence." The judge considered, then nodded. "Motion granted. Test will be scheduled within the week." Clara gasped. Michael closed his eyes. Gabriel's face crumpled for the first time, fear breaking through his armor. Dear viewers, there it was, the blade of truth unsheathed, a test that could bind or sever. And for Michael Lawson, the coming days would hold the cruelest uncertainty of all. If the story touches you, leave your comment below and share where you're watching from. And please subscribe to Voices of Reality. We will continue our story in part 2.